All right, so we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Charlie No Seikatsu channel. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've made any kind of video, so this is interesting getting back into it. I am, of course, joined today by AlKameido. Al, can you give us an idea of what people can find when they go on your channel?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Al. I have a YouTube channel called AlKameido. I usually go to anime conventions, comic conventions, talk about Japanese culture, otaku stuff, a lot of Japanese subculture things. And recently I've been doing like cosplay interviews and going around cons and interviewing people in general. That's basically what my channel's about.
Right, yeah, you've been really, how many cons have you been to recently? I feel like every time I see a new video from your channel, you're at like a new place, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, this year for sure, I've been able to get like press into these conventions.
Right, I mean, like when you say that, you mean like actual press credentials, right? You're going in with a tag.
Right, I can actually go in anywhere and everywhere I want, basically.
Nice.
So yeah. This year was like the first start of that since I made my YouTube channel. And I don't know, I've been to a lot. It's probably like on average, like two a month.
Nice.
Maybe more sometimes.
Yeah. No, and then sorry to cut you off, but what sort of credentialing process do you need to go through to get your tags? You just be like, yo, I've got a channel focused on this section of pop culture, and they're like, okay, we'll give you a tag, or
basically. I mean,
nice.
Some of the smaller conventions, like the ones that I tried to do, they were like, okay, cool, go ahead. But you know, some like the bigger stuff, like last week I went to Anime Expo, which is
right
the biggest anime convention in the US for sure, maybe the world.
Yeah, it's a big deal, yeah.
This year was over 100,000 people, individual people that were there.
Yeah.
So like that kind of convention, I would probably never get able to get in because they have a really strict criteria. One of them is over 100,000 hits per month. Has to be 2 years in publication. So even if I had like YouTube, I don't think I've even been on YouTube for 2 years. So
sure.
So a lot of the bigger conventions have a lot of higher criteria, which I don't even try because I know I'll just get rejected. But some of the smaller stuff, yeah, I just say I have a YouTube channel. Here's the link. Here's my credentials, and they say, okay,
nice.
Here's your press badge. Let's do it. All right, cool. Free ticket.
Otherwise, you're doing like how should I say? I don't even know. For the record, I'm not myself. So if I speak in a stranger way than normal, that's why today. But also otherwise, you're doing sort of like uncredentialed, or rather, I'm trying to think of a more creative way to say it. But you're doing kind of like guerrilla journalism, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
cool.
Just I'm there as like my perspective as an attendee, more than I'm trying to cover this event, and I can do all these little, everything about this event, and do interviews, actual interviews with some of the famous people that I've done for one of the conventions. So.
Sure. Yeah, and if you guys are interested in Japanese pop culture, cosplay, things like that, be sure to check out Al's channel. One of the things that I think you'll find really interesting is that Al sort of gets out of the way of his subject a lot of the time. So he'll go on and he'll bring on cosplayers, and he'll just sort of give them a topic, and they'll sort of just riff on it. So you get a lot of really interesting information about body positivity, what it's like getting into cosplaying, and other things like that. So if you're interested in anything like that, and you want to see videos from somebody who's not interested in sort of putting their face or their opinion or too much letting themselves get in the way of the subject too much, this is definitely the channel to check out. That being said, that's the entire reason why I wanted to bring Al on to the channel today for the first video on my channel in a while. And I don't know why I leaned into the microphone, but so if you guys are into Japanese pop culture, be it anime, manga, what have you. Hello, John Snow. Hello, Jon Snow. You know nothing. John O'Connor, Becky, Emily, Jess, everybody else who's here. Thank you for coming. You maybe are aware that there are sort of like kind of uncomfortable parts to being like a fan of Japanese pop culture in a way that it doesn't feel uncomfortable to be a fan of, say, for example, like a Spider-Man comic book or something like that. So basically to give you guys the main idea of what we want to talk about today, and how it came about, I was playing a game on the smartphone called Gothic wa Mahou Otome, which is like it's sort of like a classic arcade era like fixed shooter basically. So like, you guys have ever played like a game called Raiden, where like you are like in a jet and you just go back and forth and you shoot whatever comes on the screen, right? So it's basically like that, except you play as like an angel, and like these witches are the ones that give you powers. And what sort of got me really thinking about this recently is that part of this game is like a dating mini game, which is fine. I mean, whatever. Dating is in itself not creepy, until I found out as I was going on a date with one of these girls that she was 11 years old, right? And that really sort of threw me for a loop. And I was like, okay, I think I need to not play this game anymore. And so to sort of attach what we want to talk about today to that is that's not the first time I've sort of had that kind of feeling, that kind of experience where I wondered if it's okay to be a fan of something. And of course, we want to talk about this in like the grander cultural context, and then we sort of want to bring it back and see if it's even makes sense for me to feel this way, if we can appreciate it as a piece of art, or if the sort of implications of it are sort of overall bad. So I think I explained that well, Al. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think so.
So
I mean, this is the title is The Dark Side of Japanese Pulp Culture.
That's right.
And I would say, first of all, that these are just, I hate to say this, but this is our own opinions, and part of it is academic. I do have a major in East Asian studies pertaining to Japan, so I do know history, pop culture, in general, and then I have a minor in Japanese. So, I mean, I do have an academic background on this stuff, so I have studied it pretty intensely for a while.
And also, I mean, anecdotally too, right? Like you've been here, you've had sort of like that firsthand experience of culture,
right,
and
right.
Being someone who's sort of steeped like a fine bag of tea in the hot water that is Japanese pop culture.
Yes.
I mean, of course.
I'm a big fan, of course. I mean, I love to do YouTube, and that's what I post on my channel. But I would say, first of all, but that even like that kind of genre, it's still even a subculture of subculture, which is kind of, I don't know if that even makes sense, but it's part of the Japanese culture of like maybe like child innocence or child rearing. But
okay, well,
when it gets to like to a certain point, yeah, it's kind of, well, should I be comfortable in that or not?
Right. Well, let's hit on that a little. Well, not a little bit, a lot of it. Have you, so kind of more specifically, can you think of some other personal examples where you've been reading something or watching something or playing something where you've kind of had that sort of similar feeling or experience that I was talking about?
Well, okay. Well, I have a little story, I guess. The first time I went to Akihabara many moons ago. If people have been to Akihabara, there are certain stores that are blatantly on the verge of child pornography, or at least suggesting kind of that things. And I mean, that's probably one of the points where like, oh, okay, this is kind of weird. And I understand it's kind of part of Japanese culture, and I mean, the pictures that are out in front are just suggestive rather than, full on nudity,
Sure, sure.
I'm sure I've never been inside the stores, even out of curiosity, but I don't know exactly how far into nudity they have. But
Right, right. You're not investigating in other words. Yeah, yeah.
no, not even out of academic curiosity.
Sure, sure.
um, but you know, if you watch anime, you watch manga, you play games, a lot of the characters in general are all underage.
That's right. Yeah.
Number one, and there's a specific reason. We'll get into it a little bit later, but um, yeah, I mean, they're mostly all underage. I don't think any. There's certain. If we go back, like let's say early 2000s, like Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, they're all like adult characters,
Right, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, but even some of the what's another one? What are examples I had? Like even like Sailor Moon, they're like 14 years old.
Sure,
So
sure. Well, I
um,
think I mean, of
Naruto,
course,
One Piece characters. Well, the
yeah.
One Piece characters are a little bit different. They're all kind of like 19 to 20 to 30. But even like Gurren Lagann, which is a very popular anime, those characters like 14. Like Yoko with the big boots is 14 years old. So
Right, yeah, that's always like you find out their age and you're like, "What? How is that possible?" But I mean, so you've sort of hit on a couple things here, and I think maybe the first thing we should get out of the way, of course, is that a lot of this stuff is made for teenagers, right? Um, or primarily targeted at teenagers. Like, for
um,
example, well, I mean, like, for example, Sailor
what
Moon
part?
is
Oh
is
yeah,
is a shoujo manga, right? Shoujo anime. So like,
right.
um, and that entire story is sort of about empowering women. So particularly young women, right? So like, I get I get that sort of targeting, and I also get, like, for example, Shokugeki no Soma. Like, those guys are supposed to be what, like, first year high school students or something.
Right,
They're 14,
right.
15. Um, and again, that's a shonen show, so like, of course, that's targeted at young men. And so of course you're gonna see like a lot of like what makes that show so crazy and interesting. Like, they eat something and it's like, like the
And all their clothes fall off. Yeah.
yeah, all the clothes kind of shoot off. Wikipedia,
Uh-oh,
you,
she's
you
doing child pornography.
you disgust me. But I mean, so of course, like, I understand that. I understand, like, there's sort of that targeting, and there's a reason for that, of course. Young men in America are the same way. Like, they want to see stuff where, like,
Fan service. Yeah,
yeah, it's fan service.
yeah.
It's fan service. But I think what concerns me is when you have something that is sort of definitely made for maybe like the 18-year-old and up kind of audience, and it still sort of sneaks in that kind of stuff. And that was something I was hinting at, or not hinting at, was talking about, with that game. It's
Mm-hmm.
particularly when that character, that 11-year-old girl, is sort of presented to you as like this teenager, or
Right.
not a teenager, as like the other characters
A
are
young girl.
18, yeah, are like 18 to 24, and you're like, okay, so she's an adult, and then it's like she's 11, right?
Okay, yeah, that was one of my questions. So how
Yeah,
old are the other characters?
yeah, it's all of them are of age of consent. They're adults.
Okay.
And then it's just like, uh okay, like, I don't
But is it
actually
like
want to
really,
date an 11-year-old. So yeah, yeah.
but is it anything like sexual or just like, oh, I'm gonna take care of you, or oh,
Well,
here's lunch, or
this is a really interesting thing that you brought up that I hadn't thought about, is that this idea that you're going on like a, not so much like a date, but you're sort of just helping to bring up a young girl type.
right,
But
right.
no, the context of it is you're going out, you're taking her out on a date for dinner or whatever.
Mm.
Yeah. Hello, Nippon Culture Quest. So I mean, that's something I would like you, I think, to elaborate on a little bit, is
Sure.
the idea of sort of nurturing versus any kind of sort of
Actual dating.
sexual,
Yeah.
yeah, sexual intention, I guess.
Sure. Well, I kind of disagree with you on the audience thing,
Sure.
and I'll give some examples. But
Yeah.
for sure, like the Shonen Jump kind of stuff, like even Soma, One Piece, Naruto, all those kinds of things, are catered to, well, Shonen meaning young children or young men in
Mm.
general.
Yeah.
And then shoujo, like Sailor Moon, is catered to young women or young ladies. But I think even in general, like anime, even if it's a high school setting or like a middle school setting, anime is not for kids. Period. I'm sorry, like
Like
I know
ever?
it's a
Ever?
cartoon. No, not ever, but like I would take away like the shonen stuff, like Case Closed, yeah, like Naruto, any of those top Jump comics. I would say that's catered for kids, but
Right.
a lot of other stuff are. I would say it's catered for adults, and the reason I say that is a lot of the storytelling is more like nostalgia. Like if I were in high school or if I were in middle school, I wish my uh, high school life or middle school life was like that. Women with big boobs, aliens coming down to invade us, magic, things like that. And a lot of it, I think, comes from, I guess, I don't know if it's a Japanese cultural thing or just um, in general, where uh, the storytelling, it's easier or better to, I don't know, I know you're a writer, but it's easier or better to tell a story through adolescence, where there's a lot of emotions, like teenage emotions or being naive, and it's easier to tell a story that way as a to cater to an audience who are already adults that they wish maybe
Mhm.
they had that kind of teenage life or middle school life.
Oh, okay.
And
So sort of basically do not do not make a mistake of because something is set in high school or set with younger age characters that it's geared towards them. In other words.
right,
Right.
right,
Okay. Okay.
right.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, this is just my opinion, and I kind of see it, that even though the audience is adults,
Hmm.
I think the adults see themselves as, oh, I'm back in high school or I'm back in middle school and I wish I had. So they're kind of already in the mindset that they're that same age. So they're
Sure.
not looking at a 14-year-old with big tits as a 30-year-old male adult. It's like,
Okay. Okay. They're sort
so
of
you're
relating to
thinking
it
that,
from like
oh,
an
I
inside.
was a
Yeah.
14-year-old, if I was a 14-year-old boy and I had superpowers or I could fight aliens or whatever, that I would be attracted to this woman who's has big tits.
Oh, okay, okay. That's an interesting point. I think actually my favorite manga, and I guess sort of by extension anime is Silver. Whoa.
Sorry,
No,
Silver
no.
Spoon. Yeah,
Yes, is Silver Spoon, right? And that's based around a character who's I think he's a first year high school student.
right. In the
Um,
countryside or something, right?
yeah, he goes to Hokkaido because his family sucks, and something happened. We aren't really sure what happened yet, as far as being the viewer is concerned. But I get that. I get that. Like I guess I don't relate when I'm watching it. I'm not like, oh well, this is this kid and he's interested in this high school girl, so it's not okay for me to relate to him, right? Like I get it. I get it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting.
I
Um,
just I've read
yeah,
certain things about that, and that's why I kind of had that opinion about it.
sure.
But what was the? Yeah, I mean, that was it, right? Mm.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I guess I don't know why. I don't know why I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I mean,
yeah.
if you're when you're watching anime or reading manga and stuff, I don't think you're acting as a. Well, I guess maybe you are, but uh, not like you and you, as in like the audience you.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
Um, I mean, I'm sure there are, and I think that's the hardest part to differentiate between art and reality.
I think though too, like there's also that issue of if you you talked about like how they're telling the story. I think sometimes it doesn't serve that purpose.
Okay.
I mean, what I mean to say is something is sometimes just there for the sake of being there, it feels like, and so it sort of takes you out. So you're no
Right.
longer having that sort of experience of escapism, or you're no longer having that experience of putting yourself in that character's shoes. You're sort of stepping out of it and going, what? Like, why? How is this serving the story? Like, how is this sort of
I see. Right.
continuing the narrative that I'm supposed to be engrossed in? Um, and sort of, so for the record, I just want to clear something up here, John O'Connor. I didn't meet a real 11-year-old. I didn't go out on a date with a real 11-year-old.
Yeah, we're gonna have to keep on saying this stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
I just really want that to be a matter of public knowledge.
This is in a video game.
Yeah, it was just in a
Not
smartphone game.
reality.
Yeah. But I mean, it's sort of like, what is something I can liken it to? Okay, so a while ago over on the Burrow, a shameless self-promotion here, my creative channel with Wikipedia, the mistress. Awkward. But basically, I was talking about how in Jaws, the novelization of Jaws, the shark story, you kept getting kicked out of the narrative because the guy was so completely and obviously racist when he was writing it. And so like the things that were peppered in there, like they served no purpose. The things he was saying served no purpose. And so it sort of served to give you like this sort of narrative whiplash.
Right.
Where you were just sort of drawn out of it, like, okay, what the hell am I reading? And so I guess it's sort of the same way when I was playing the game. It was sort of like, okay, what the hell am I playing? Like, am I?
Right.
Yeah. It's so long way of saying it. It kicks you out of it, and maybe it doesn't serve a purpose. Which is not to say that's always the case, but yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, like a shoot 'em up game. Yeah, I don't understand how dating will gain you more powers or stats or whatever in a shoot 'em up game. But like I have a game called Fire Emblem.
Yeah.
And one of the controversies of that game is there's a side kind of mission or side quest or side game, I guess, where you're basically, because it's a touchscreen, right? So there's other characters in the game who are, of course, younger, in their teenage years, and you're petting them or stroking them, like their heads, or I guess you could touch their boobs or whatever. And that part of the game was cut out in the Western release because they thought that's kind of creepy, right?
Yeah.
Why would stroking or touching someone's face or whatever increase your stats, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some of the characters are older, but in general, most of them are pretty young. Even though it's a fighting RPG, tactical RPG. I mean, it has nothing to do with like school setting or anything like that. But it's like, what is the purpose of that, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of
yeah. There's
other
sort
than
of
just
like
okay, let's use the touch screen somehow.
Right. Yeah. There's kind of like a shoehorn type thing. Yeah.
But part of the weird stuff is like there's a controversy of like, why the hell did you take it out? I mean, is that
right? Well, which is
it's innocent enough. She's not like naked, and you're not really showing anything else except for her head.
Right. But I mean,
pet the head.
I think again that sort of goes back to sort of like the market for that, like who they're selling to, of course.
Right.
Like there's a reason why Dead or Alive has like those ridiculous like boob physics, right?
Right.
There's a demand for it.
Right.
And
there's a volleyball game, which is not coming out in the United States either because of that.
Yeah. Right. But that's sort of the next thing I want to talk about. I kind of want to put it into like this grander like cultural scheme. And so this is something we kind of touched on when we were talking about sort of like that idea of nurturing like a young woman versus actually having any sort of romantic intention toward her.
Right. And I mean there's a historical background because there's a famous book called the Genji Monogatari.
Right.
Written by a woman.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you read the story, it's like over like 2,000 pages. but I had to read the whole entire book.
In college.
But yeah, in college. But basically, the main character, he's like royalty. So I mean, you can kind of separate that away. That nobility is a little bit different than the commoner people. But like basically, he finds a young girl, who's probably, I don't know, like 9 or 10 at the time, and basically he nurtures her to be his wife. And I don't know if that's like started like the whole entire cultural thing or whatever, but I mean that's part of the like a very old example of how like Japanese culture kind of came to be, in a sense. I mean, I'm not choosing that particular book, but that's one of the most significant books in Japanese history.
Sure.
So like even in that story, well, I mean, you know, people don't marry like 4 or 5 women like he did, but he did go out and find this young girl and basically raised her to be his wife, like to be the perfect woman, you know. And I kind of see that as an example of, well, you know, like that's why you kind of see it like throughout the history, and a lot of it is like trying to raise. I know it sounds so sexist, and I really don't kind of believe it, but like to raise a girl to become a woman, right? An example of this is like J-pop idols. Most J-pop idols, like AKB48, Morning Musume, all those like girl bands and stuff, they're all under 17 or 18. There's a few that are older, but and you know, because I go to all these conventions and I interview people and I get to know like the other subcultures of subculture, like a lot of the fans who enjoy like J-pop music, they're not really thinking like sexually. Like even like there's older men who like in their 40s and 50s who love J-pop like crazy, like total fandom. But they don't think of it as like, oh, I want to date her, I want to marry her, and I want to have children or whatever. It's like, oh, this young girl, she's trying her best to do in this crazy J-pop industry, and you know, I want to support her and go to these events and you know, buy all these CDs and ever. And their thinking is like, well, I want to see how she grows up, support her, and you know, until she becomes a woman. And I hear that a lot with a lot of the fans, because they always say like, oh, you know, why does a 40-year-old man go to all these concerts of like 12 to 14-year-old girls? Like, it's kind of weird, right? So yeah, I kind of see it like that.
I think I like I understand that sort of historical context, and but I guess again I didn't really apply it to like the idea of idol culture. But I think, and of course, something that never needs to be said, but we all say it a lot. Just as a matter of my opinion, I think that still comes across as kind of really fucking creepy. Like
yeah, it is. No, I'm not saying it's not creepy or weird.
Right.
And I don't condone any kind of weird stuff, but I mean I don't want to say that's just the way it is. I know you've done a video with like shogunai. I hate that word because it sounds like you can't help but to be that way, you know. There's nothing you can change, nothing you can. I'm just paraphrasing. I'm sure you have.
Sure. Yeah. No. I'm not sort of saying like, "L, you sick bastard." Like
No.
I appreciate you putting that out there. I think like, of course, like the tale of Genji being from another time, right? Like, of course, like the sort of cultural norms and sort of like the mores of that time are of course going to be different, but there's just something deeply disturbing to me about the idea of raising a woman to be my wife.
Yeah, that's creepy. Yeah,
you know, and so
but times have changed for sure. You know,
yeah.
You can't marry 4 or 5 women, and you know.
Well, yeah.
I mean, culture has to change. But sometimes history repeats itself. So
that's true. But I think in this I think by the end of the stream, this is something we really want to like get to, is that obviously this is a matter of cultural relativism. I think.
Right. I think you have to understand at least the background of it. I mean, you don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it. But at least have an understanding. I mean, I think that's what we're here to learn, is have an understanding of everyone, so that we don't have crazy things that happen in America, which we don't. Not going to talk about here, but
yeah. Well, and Emily, sorry, Wikipedia. For those of you who don't know her by her human name.
her real name.
Yeah, she asks, she points out that sort of it's not abnormal to sexualize women, particularly young women. And so why is it that in Japan it seems to be more, I guess, commonly accepted and sort of woven into pop culture? And I think maybe it's not woven more into Japanese culture than it is, say, like American culture. It's just sort of like how obvious it is here.
Yeah,
you know, like of course, like I can remember, like probably a pretty big example was when the Harry Potter movies were still coming out, and I think the last one came out when I was I don't know, a junior in college or something. But I remember leading up until the time Emma Watson was 18. You know, people were, you know, there was a big thing written around that, and there were counters for when she would turn 18 and when she would become legal and stuff like that. So, but that is sort of more. It's not as visible as, say, like that story you're talking about, where there's clearly like a 15-year-old girl drawn in a very certain way, you know, sort of beckoning you into a shop that's sort of catered to people interested in that sort of look and that sort of art. So, yeah. My question is, do you think that the rise in the popularity of the ecchi and harem manga and anime over the years is what is causing the change of viewing? I don't know. I think I'm talking about Salty P's question here.
Yeah, I see it.
But I don't know. I think would require a broader, sort of more intense understanding of both ecchi and harem manga and sort of manga in general, to really answer that. But I think one thing that's important to point out, as we're sort of putting this into the cultural context, right? Like there are services here that have gotten a lot of light recently, had a lot of light shed on them rather recently, about schoolgirls who are basically selling themselves for dates, sometimes more than just a cup of coffee.
Right, but that's an ongoing thing, even when I was in Japan. So
yeah, I just think probably now, because like history,
it's just like I don't really want to associate with that, but it's basically, if something happens and it's seen, it's put on the media,
right?
And I think it's part of the media's how do I say, purpose is to grab attention. And something happens, something like that, have to get it out.
Yeah.
And you know, even I would say when I was in Japan, it's not a common thing, but it does happen.
Right.
You know.
And there's certainly leak over from that, right, into the States. Like,
right.
There's a reason why, like, the schoolgirl outfit is like a thing in the States, like, sexually speaking, as far as like
I mean, there's they still have restaurants like that still here.
Yeah. And so there's that, and of course there has been some kind of crackdown on it, but it is still, well it's not like every schoolgirl is going out and sort of selling herself for a date kind of thing. Jess, thank you for coming. Take it easy. Have a nice day. I hope work goes well. You know, I don't wanna paint the picture that like every high schooler gets involved in this, or that Japan is sort of like promoting it, but there is sort of like this feeling that while they're not promoting it and saying like, hey, it's okay, there is sort of like a mood, not a mood, but an overall feeling like they're turning a blind eye.
No, I get you. I think you gave me an article where, I mean, basically, child pornography was banned just recently.
Yeah, 2014.
And
2014. Yeah. And
and
that's, yeah.
how do I put it? It's, well, of course, child pornography in worldwide is illegal.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
And I think the article is saying, although that is like real life, like nudity and stuff like that is illegal. However, it does not affect like manga,
Video
anime,
games. Yeah.
video games, and like doujinshi, all that stuff.
Right.
And well, why is that the case? And well, their argument, not my argument, but their argument is it's not real. It's 2D, right?
Right. Right.
It's you have to separate art from reality. Reality, of course, we're gonna ban that. The government, that is something worldwide already known that that's bad. If you're underage, there should not be any nudity. But written or drawn or created things like that is okay still. And I know, like, there's been like a lot of what is it called? A lot of pushback from the Western countries. I should say Western countries, because not only Japan does this. It's like China, Hong Kong, Taiwan. I mean, if you go to those countries too, there's still kind of that art, pretty close to child pornography kind of art. It's not only Japan.
Right. And this is maybe something I should have pointed out at the beginning. Like, the last thing either of us want to do is like put a target on Japan's back and say it's weird and perverted and pretty much anything else you could read about it by going on Rocket News 24.
Right.
But of course, us being us, this is sort of like the context in which we're having the conversation.
Right.
But yeah, and
as you said, it's kind of like it is a blind eye, and I mean, I kind of have mixed feelings. I know it's bad. There's a certain line for sure.
Right. Well, and
there's the gray line, and there's a certain point like, no, that's really bad.
Right, and I mean, I get that idea of wanting to say, okay, well, at what point do we start stepping into the territory of sort of suppressing freedom of expression or freedom,
right?
What is effectively freedom of speech,
right?
But then, like, I don't know that I want to get into this, but anyway, when I was in college over here, when I was an exchange student, I went to book off for the first time, and for better or worse, one of the first things I bought was hentai, which, by the way, my father later found, and we had a real awkward conversation about it. He was just like, I found your books. Just keep them in a place your little brother can't see them. Anyway, that was the end of it, but it was super awkward.
As long as your mom didn't find out.
Yeah. But anyhow, that tells you when I went to college. That was 2007. So that was before. It was really before like interweb porn was more the norm. Anyway. But basically, so I picked it up and I didn't think much of it. And of course, you never. You never buy porn for the story, right? Or you're never getting into anything pornographic.
I have Playboy just for the stories. Yes.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, I only buy this for the stories. But anyway, there were these extremely graphic images. Like down to the finest detail, like of the way skin folded in certain areas and stuff like that. And really, really super graphic stuff. And then you realize that the women, or who you thought were women in these stories, are 15. They're 16.
Right.
And then you for suddenly like, oh, okay, what the Christ? How is this not illegal? And I get that argument about it being created and drawing the line between something that's real and effectively hurting an actual child, as opposed to it being a drawing and maybe saying, okay, well, is it really hurting anybody? And
right.
I
And I just
don't.
want to point out, this is
Yeah.
not my argument. That was just the argument from.
Yeah. Yeah. You're gonna get hate mail.
Yeah, I know.
You
Like this
perverted
guy
OG
loves
stuff.
pornography. No, it has nothing to do. Yeah.
Mm. I didn't realize that, by the way, Salty P, about Spirited Away. Um, but but
Yeah, I don't know either.
yeah,
But I mean, there's a lot of underlying stories in Ghibli stuff for sure. But
sure,
I
and
don't know
a
about
lot of
that
them
one.
tend to be more adult in theme too.
Right.
Uh,
But
but
the
yeah,
main
so
characters are all young women.
yeah, yeah, and so anyway, like I get that argument, but I think maybe the message that's being sent is still harmful, whether or not they're real
Right.
little girls or their
Fake. Yeah.
illustrations. Yeah.
I think it's hard to well, it's kind of the argument is, does that equal reality? Like, does that make people go out and go find young girls and do those kind of things? I
Right, and
mean,
yeah,
I don't have enough evidence or research to equate those two things together,
right,
but I'm sure there are bad people out there and are like that, and for those type of people, I'm sure that will just fuel the fire. You know what I mean?
right. I think it's kind of like the same argument about like violent video games. How, I mean,
Right.
I think it's died down a bit now, but particularly a couple years ago
If
when,
something happens, they'll come back up. But yeah,
yeah, where they were like, okay, well, this kid played violent video games, and that's why he went and shot 15 people in America. Right, but more likely than
the
not,
kid
this
the
was a
kid
kid who, yeah,
was messed up. Period. But
right,
that had
yeah,
nothing to do with video games or anything. Right.
yeah, he had a violent
That's my
disposition.
opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, there was something, uh, some emotional or mental issue, and then
Right.
there, of course, there's the whole cultural thing to take into consideration of the states. What you do now when you're upset is you go and shoot some people. So
Right.
and
Because
it's
like normal
yeah,
people, like maybe you and me, even though we
yeah,
have those thoughts or we play those games or we watch all this weird stuff, we're
yeah,
never gonna actually ever think about acting it out. I
right,
hope. I
right.
mean, I don't.
And so
But in
yeah,
general, those kind of people, these things kind of don't really affect, and that's why we're maybe having this conversation because we're kind of normal. Well, not normal, but um, level-headed human beings, and people who are not going to go out and do crazy things. It's
right,
kind of
and mm,
that's like the border for me is like, well, yeah, I know these are bad things, but in general, normal, level-headed people, level human beings would never do. It doesn't equate this equals this. But for
right.
those people that are not mentally stable, it could just fuel, and that equals that. That is becomes their reality, and it's gone from art into something illegal and something bad. You know.
I think I think Mel's pointing out this idea though that sort of the reason why it can exist or is tolerated is because it is tolerated in the real world,
Right.
these ideas, and so that they're then accepted in our media. So maybe there is more of like a direct correlation between that sort of artificial world and the real world. So which I think is why it feels so problematic. But
Mm,
I I think too, like there's always this argument, right, of like, okay, well, do you just accept the art as art? Can you separate, say, like I don't know, I'm struggling to find an example, but let's like something innocuous, even like silver spoon. Can you separate that as a fake story about a kid who had a shitty childhood or young childhood? Um, can you separate that as it being fictional, or what I'm trying to say is, can you celebrate it just as a piece of work, or do you have to put it into context of real life? And
mm,
it's also somewhat related to the idea of like when an artist does something really fucking bad. Like who's that rather famous film director, Roman Polanski?
Yeah, yeah.
right, who did some horrible things, and Woody Allen, right, who's just a
Right.
creep by all accounts, but I like his movies, so I like it's sort of like
Yeah,
can you
yeah,
yeah
well,
can you just appreciate the art, or do you really have to sort of take a more heady, I guess, approach to it? And I think I think at least for me, it's the latter. Um,
hmm.
like I can't separate the two. Um, it just it feels equally wrong for me,
Hmm.
but yeah,
And it should. I think it should. Like, at least you have to think about, like, this is kind of weird. You know, sometimes, like, for me, who are kind of immersed in it, I gotta think, like, okay, this does kind of get close to, something that's should not be okay. You know,
mm,
and yeah, I mean, that's the hardest part is the freedom of speech and the freedom of creating your art. Like, what's the limit? How far does it go? Right? How much can you
right,
express yourself? Because sometimes the people who say all the bad stuff, we have to protect them. We actually have to kind of protect them the most. Unfortunately, that's what freedom is all about. You have to have
right.
certain restrictions and uh, leeway, I guess, in a way.
Right. I mean, freedom is effectively. Here we go. A couple Americans talking about freedom, but but I mean, it's effectively shaping society and the laws that govern that society in a way that um, don't. God, talking is so hard today. That don't
This is a hard
oppress
subject, though, to be
people,
honest.
or
Yeah.
yeah, that don't oppress people or effectively take away their freedom,
Yeah.
right? I think I
But
cut
I think
out
like this
about
kind of
75% of what I was trying to say, but yeah.
but I think this kind of conversation is it's probably helpful, like to think about, like, well, how far does it go? How far can we say, like, no, that's it. I'm done. I'm not playing this game anymore. As I think you did, right? You just stopped playing the game.
Yeah, I was like, all right, well, that's a little too much. And I think
Yeah.
in Emily, Wikipedia is pointing out like how devastating it can be for younger people to sort of absorb this kind of thing, because of course when you're younger it's definitely like a lot harder to tell fiction from reality, to tell a sort of fictional morality apart from how your sort of real world framing should be.
Right. And who governs that? I think the first line of defense is your parents, right?
right, yeah, I think so. I think
And
so.
unfortunately, well, I can't say for all Japanese people, but in general, um, well, I don't know. Like, for me, for example, my parents were strict, and even though I played violent video games and did weird stuff and manga, anime, stuff like that, and I hope I'm not a terrible person and don't do illegal things
Well,
besides anime,
you seem okay. You
downloading
seem
games.
okay. Yeah.
But I think it really starts with there. For me, every time I see these, like, violence or like the sexual predators and stuff like that, like, well, the first line of defense is your parents, right? They have to teach you that some of these things are bad. I know society's telling you that, your friends are telling you that. I know peer pressure, all that stuff.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have
yeah.
gone through all that stuff, yes. But I think the bottom line, if you have some kind of basic morality, all that stuff
Mm,
is kind of, well, I already have a base. I know what's kind of right and wrong. I can
sure.
distinguish it there.
But
So I,
again, yeah. It's just what Emily's pointing out here with like the 16-year-old girl, like,
dating the 26-year-old,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, she when you're 16, like, despite what we think when we're 16, we have no idea.
Nope.
You know,
I didn't know anything.
I don't feel like I had any idea until I was 25. Like, to be honest, until I was out of
To
college
be
and
honest,
like,
I still don't know, and I'm like 30, almost 37. So
right, yeah, and like, I mean, you don't have any idea of what's going to be good or bad for you or anything like that, because you don't know yourself until you're, yeah,
have experienced
yeah,
life. Yeah.
yeah, and so this is the thing, and I 100% agree with what you're saying about parents, but I also agree with what she's saying about like about that really tender time. And a lot of times, like parents don't even know this stuff is going on, right? Like
That's true.
I can remember being 16 years old, like outside of my parents' garage, like smoking weed, and like
Right.
they had no idea, you know. Sorry, mom and dad,
But like,
if you watched
but
this
like,
one
what
video.
stopped you? What stopped you from continuing or getting to worse things like other drugs and stuff like that? What stopped you?
Well, you're talking about like that the sort of underlying idea of morality, I guess, and also
Right.
sort of like my own sort of self-instilled limits.
Right.
And so those were places I just knew I never wanted to go. But yeah, and that's due to my parents, or probably more due to media and friends and things like that, that I knew I never wanted to go anywhere else from that. But
Right.
from there. But
Right. And as NCQ said, not everyone has that, so that's why maybe society has to kick in and say, okay, this is wrong and right. Right.
right, yeah, that's exactly it. And here, like no one is expressly saying, okay, it's wrong for that 16-year-old girl to be dating that 26-year-old American teacher.
But actually, the world standard is when are you actually an adult?
Right. Well,
Right.
that's
I think
that's
the
the thing
world
about it.
standard is like you
Yeah.
can get married at 16 as long as you have your parents' consent.
Right. Yeah. Yo,
So that's like I
that's
think that's a pretty
exactly it.
world standard.
Right. So if you
It might
don't,
be even younger in other countries too.
yeah,
So
I mean, there's a lot of, yeah, Jesus Christ. But um I mean, the thing is too, like, is that if you don't expressly restrict something, are you tacitly condoning it, right? I mean, I think
right.
there's always that.
Right.
And yeah, and I agree here in this case, like the teacher high school student thing, the teacher any student thing, is never an okay situation.
Right.
But that's, yeah, it's a matter of power dynamics and taking advantage and things like that. But also
Right.
there again, there's a sort of societal thing. I can't speak to it so much here. But like back home, right? Like how many stories have you heard about like the female student, this beautiful female student who fell for her teacher who was actually married, and there's sort of like that romanticization of like of that whole thing, right? And I wonder like how much parenting stands a chance when that's sort of like that constant stream of data is telling you one
Yeah.
thing that's completely different
Especially as an
from,
adult,
yeah,
another adult, right? You think as that age, any kind of adult is like your parents, right? There's like
yeah,
an
right,
authority.
right, exactly, and
Because
so
I feel like right
naturally,
now, well, if the first defense is your parents, the second defense are your teachers, right? Because
yeah,
they're gonna be
yeah,
with your child more than probably with your parents the first, let's say, 18 years of their lives, right? Especially,
right,
I can say because I have children, so I can kind of imagine that, yeah, sure, I can do as much as I can to teach them morality or whatever, but when they get out of the school, like that's 8 hours a day that I have no control.
right, exactly. Which is what,
And
yeah,
I would hope the teachers would be the second line of defense, teaching them, oh, this is bad, this is good. And if they take advantage, like he said, like the power thing, that's a terrible thing. That should never be okay, ever. Period.
yeah. And
Yeah.
to answer Ryan Rafferty's question here, the age of consent in Japan is 15, I think, for sexual activity, and then what is it, 16, maybe 17 for getting married.
With consent of adults,
Yeah, with the
your
consent of the
parents.
parents. Yeah. Um, but it's like, yeah, and I guess we're sort of coming to a close at this point. And so this is a good place to be. Is that, have you ever had a situation where you have said, okay, well, I can no longer watch this anime or read this manga, because
Yeah,
of a situation like this, kind of
yeah. I mean,
imagery.
especially since I kind of watch and read a lot of stuff just to test it out or see how it is. There are several anime that I just went, oh no, this is really messed up.
Right.
I mean, I forgot what, I don't even want to even bring the anime's name up, but um, it was kind of popular. Like if you went to Akihabara, they had those big signs that promote that anime.
Sure.
I don't know if you've been to Akihabara. Like there's like a lot of billboards of like the popular anime that are coming out, or
Right.
something that's coming out on Blu-ray. There's this one where basically like women are getting raped. It's like, no, this is done. I don't even know how this is even an anime.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's done. This is done. I can't. That's terrible.
Yeah.
And it's like, how is this even able to even be put out? And I saw the sign on Akihabara. I was like, out on Blu-ray. Yeah, I want to kind of tear this sign down and say, no, this is not
Right.
something that anyone should watch.
Right.
You know, I don't care how old these. They were probably in their teen years, but it's like, whoa, this is like straight out rape. I can't watch this.
Right.
That was pretty bad. That was like one of probably my worst moments in anime ever. It's like, nope, done, delete, get out.
I think I had a similar experience with, I don't even remember the full name, but it was stupid long, like Watamote was the short name of it. Yeah, and I stopped about 2 episodes in because it was like this sort of like kind of like the same thing, like this normalization of rape. And almost like the character, this young female character was like sort of expecting it and almost like cheering for it to happen at some point. And I was like, okay, what the fuck? Like, what sort of message? And she was 14. She was a high school, like a junior high school student. So just like, what the Christ? So yeah, so that was
so like that. Yeah, I don't understand how that even flies, to be honest. Like I think that's past the line, way past the line.
Yeah.
I know there was actually probably no nudity, but yeah, that passes the line. That way passes the line. I would destroy all the copies if I could, but I leave that to you, Charlie. Just go to Akihabara real quick.
just go around and be like the
just
be like
I really, that's the one thing that kind of like, woo. All right. I have to think about like how much anime I need to watch.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but for sure there are limits. There's things that should not exist in this world. But yeah. So.
Right. So, all right. Well, so to sort of bring it all together then, and I guess really this is the question I wanted to answer. Is it okay for us to sort of have these reactions, being that both of us are from a different culture? And B, is there any answer other than just saying that we're not going to consume this kind of media?
That is the question, right?
Yeah.
I think the first one, well, as a fan, I kind of want to separate it out. And it sounds bad, but sometimes I do kind of ignore some of the bad stuff just because I'm a fan. But what is the solution? You know, I mean, yeah, we can ignore it. I'm not in Japan, so really can't influence that. And
who's to say how much you could as a foreigner anyway? And not like we can.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then the second one is what was it? Oh, what's the solution?
Yeah. Is there a solution? Is there a solution is the second part, and the first one is is it okay for us to judge? I guess.
I think it's okay to judge.
Yeah.
It's our right to judge what's right and wrong individually.
Right.
How do we do that as a society? That's another harder question, and I think. As a start, I think this kind of conversation is what's the key. We got to talk about it.
Right.
That's the first step, you know?
Yeah.
To understand that, okay, I like anime, but there's parts of anime I don't like. And some of it kind of passes the borderline that I will never, ever cross, you know? And what's the solution? Well, I guess part of it is just don't consume it. And, yeah, that's a tough one.
Well, I guess let's put it to you guys out in the comments now that like I said, we are sort of drawing to a close here on the stream. So if you have some ideas on this that you haven't already put forward in your comments, I want to thank you guys for being really active in the comments. Have some good thoughts. or questions about things that we didn't touch on or that we should have touched on or whatever, please put them in the comments now. That works. Norms. Yeah, and that's undoubtedly true with Salty P. Like there are always going to be sort of different cultural norms, right? And yeah.
Because even the standard, the standards of what makes a child or adult.
Right.
What's that line, right?
Right.
Is it 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 21, even those like the smoking age, the gambling age, things, buying pornography age, it's all different in every country, right?
Yeah.
There's no world standard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I think for me, if your mother is still making you PB&J sandwiches occasionally, probably you shouldn't be making decisions like this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably, or you shouldn't be represented in this way. But that's just me.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Just Josh, you reflect poorly in the
if you can't do adult things, you should not make adult decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think. Do you think that Western influence has had an effect on the anime industry and the way it is viewed and produced?
No.
I don't think, at least as how it was viewed and produced. Conditions are still just as shitty. I guarantee, just as they were before.
Yeah, I mean, the simple answer is no. The Western, as much as I hate to say it, anime manga is still a very minority. Okay, I know I go to all these conventions, and I go to normal places. Regular people in general think still anime manga cosplay is weird. Okay, that's maybe I would say like 10%, maybe 10% of the population is into manga, anime, Japanese stuff, right?
Sure.
So it's still a very small minority, and even though Western media or Western audience wants all this Japanese stuff, it's not going to change any of the Japanese industry. The Japanese industry is going to do whatever they want, how they want it. Period.
I think,
unfortunately,
maybe, I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Maybe I would maybe augment that to say that there's sort of like a one-way influence. That being like the way stories are told, for example, in American comic books. It's still very different, but also like the sort of art that is acceptable, or like the kind of art people want to see, the pacing. I think there is definitely like a bleed over, but maybe not. It's not one way. Excuse me. There's kind of like a back and forth. But of course, you're never gonna open up a Spider-Man comic and like see like a 12-year-old panty shot. You know what I mean? Hello, Kazuki. Welcome. If anime and manga were held to the same laws as child pornography, would it be censored art?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
But currently it's not. Child pornography is separated from even like child depictions of sexuality in manga and anime.
Right.
So Japan has already decided that that was the case, even through Western pressure. But if it's the same standards, but they don't show nudity. Like even with Food Wars, it's kind of all shaded out. Okay, even Sailor Moon when they transform.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. But
so
I think
it caters to young ladies, but men watch it. I watched Sailor Moon as a child. So
well, I think there's like a difference between like the glorification and sexualization of like a nude child.
Right. But they're all children. Those Food Wars kids are under 18, under 17.
And I think, I don't know, like that's such an a big question. But I think at least in my thinking, like the stuff that would become illegal should that kind of law finally be passed, where gratuitous anime manga is treated as child pornography, like it makes a little difference to me as far as what I'm thinking about it. Like there's a difference between art, like actual art, and something that is just pornography, right? I think
right.
I think there's a difference there. And now the only difference is that how it's looked at in the law, in the eyes of the law.
Right.
Yeah, I think. So, but yeah, no, that's a really good question. If you follow up that kind of logical reasoning, then it opens up film, photography, and I mean that's definitely the thing. True. Yeah. And but again, like I mean, are you going to ordinarily, like, how common is it for you to watch a movie and see like a 12-year-old girl engaged in an act that she can easily be drawn in, legally be drawn in? Right. And so I think there is a line, but as for who draws that line, that's kind of the problem. But yeah, and of course it doesn't just include girls, but that's just, I'm sorry, that's what springs to mind. Of course there's boys. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we don't want to get to BL. I already talked about it this morning. As Roz mentioned, I was in 3 Old Dudes live stream this morning too. So.
Okay. You're a popular chat. Yeah, and of course, I'm not saying that my feelings on this only apply to young girls. I want to point that out because of the comments right now. But that said, like, I can't even think of a time when I have opened a manga and, for example, like, there's never been a panel like focused on the dude's pants. You know what I mean? Like there's never been like suddenly like a change in camera, so to speak.
Well, I can introduce you, but
I can introduce you. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it exists. It's just, yeah. So that's I guess kind of why I'm framing it this way. But
it's actually a very funny manga, although it's kind of pretty crude. But anyways, yeah. See, that's the hard part too. Like, I don't, man, it's hard to draw that line.
Yeah, well, and
why do I like this manga or anime and that one that I want to destroy? What's kind of the difference? You know?
Right. And yeah, Wikipedia, like I agree 100%. Like, nudity is definitely not pornography.
Right.
At least not always. And yeah, the UN was talking about cracking down, but the UN can't actually do anything. The UN just sort of passes recommendations and helps, what's the word? Serves as a proxy for sanctions and things like that, right? So
right.
The UN can be like, oh, you stop doing that all they want, but okay, UN. Trying to make it like, yeah, well, that's a thing. Like, you draw adults, so intent and purpose. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to take into account, right? And of course, we don't really know the intent and the purpose of like a mangaka who sits down and draws like a panty shot, although you have a general idea why they did that.
It's called fan service.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't want to sort of beat a dead horse and sort of keep going around on it, but it's just so damn subjective, and that's sort of maybe the problem. So I haven't struck, 'cause I haven't read Berserk. Have you read it?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, that's a tough one too. But I haven't read it in a while. But yeah, there's some pretty graphic stuff in that, for sure.
Having not read it, I just 9 times out of 10.
Well, as he said, there's actually, or he or she, there are some rape scenes in it. Yeah. I don't remember if they're adults or not, but I guess that doesn't matter. It was pretty graphic. So
And I think, I don't know, like 9 times out of 10, it seems like too, when that sort of thing is happening in a story, it's just people can't possibly imagine how to make how to add drama to a female character or a male character, whichever the case may be, unless there's something terrible like that happening to him. I think it's really lazy 9 times out of 10, but
right.
that's for a different video. But yeah. Yeah, this. I mean, Wikipedia is pointing out like how kind of complicated it is, right? Like for those of you guys who are watching this after the fact, who won't be able to see the comments, basically, the idea that like a parent, right? Like my parents have pictures of me naked when I was a little kid, right? Just sort of running around after the bath or whatever, chasing a
Right,
dog,
right.
because it was hot out or whatever, right? And so that's one thing. That's not in any way pornographic. But as she's pointing out, is that somebody steals that those pictures and then has sort of plays with himself to it, then sort of becomes something else. So,
Right.
which is just another
Those are
way that
sick
it's
people,
just sort of
though.
like, yeah, it's fucked up. It's fucked up. But it's sort of like just another way in which there has to be some kind of, if a law like that was passed, well, I don't know that it applies. But anyway, basically that there has to be some kind of subjective gray area.
Right.
But yeah. So, guys, I think now we are actually going to go ahead and cut out the stream, and we'll say 2 minutes. And I don't know why I leaned in, but 2 minutes. We're gonna cut it out. I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank Al for coming. A really
Thank you.
interesting conversation on this. I'm glad we were able to sort of pick it apart as much as we were. And I want to.
Well, I think we tried to be objective as much as possible.
I think so. I hope so.
And I do have to say, I am a fan of anime and manga, all that stuff. So
Yeah.
it's a tough issue for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, guys, thank you as everybody in the comments for really interesting comments, thoughtful comments, and thoughtful questions.
Sure.
And
I wish we could save this, but
yeah, I wish.
Copy and paste maybe.
Yeah, the whole chat log.
Yeah. As Chico Simon always complains about.
Yeah, right. Moral of the stream: go read Berserk. Okay. Okay.
Well, you can watch the anime. They remade it. So.
Yeah, I saw it popping up on Twitter. But yeah, thanks guys. Thanks always for watching, and we'll see you very soon indeed.
Thank you.
Cheers. Hits the button, waits awkwardly for